Hi, I'm food critic Alan Borgen, and I'm excited to tell you about Ray's Shanghai Bistro, located next to Redlands DMV on Lagonia in Redlands. Ray's Shanghai Bistro offers the largest and most delicious array of traditional and original Chinese dishes available in the Inland Empire. Some of my favorite dishes are the house-made pot stickers, the crisp pork spare ribs with garlic, their unique spicy lamb with bamboo, the sweet and tangy deep-fried orange peel beef, and the savory basil spicy shrimp, plus lots of vegetarian dishes. Whether you dine in, pick up the food, or have them cater your next party or special occasions, you will see why Ray's, spelled R-U-I', Shanghai Bistro, is truly the best Chinese restaurant in the Inland Empire. Their website is raysshanghaibistro.net. That's raysshanghaibistro.net. RUIS shanghaibistro.net. Happy eating! You won't be disappointed.
Hi, it's Dr. Jamie Turndorf, host of Ask Dr. Love, the #1 relationship advice show in America, brought to you by Membrace and Life, the #1 vaginal moisture supplement. If you're scared to stick your toe back in the dating pool, or your relationships are rocky, or your sex life is sagging, have no fear. Dr. Love is here. I'm a #1 best-selling author with 40 years in the love trenches. Tune in to Ask Dr. Love Tuesdays, 7 to 8 a.m., and tune up all your relationships.
Inland Empire, are you ready for a block party? Teamsters Local 1932 is holding its 3rd annual Spring Fling Car Show and Cruise on May 21st on the corner of 4th Street and Sierra Way in San Bernardino, starting at 10 a.m. This is a fun-filled time for the whole family, so come out and enjoy the event on Saturday, May 21st at 10 a.m.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The CDC is giving the green light for the Pfizer COVID booster shot for kids ages 5 to 11. The panel voted 11-1 in favor of a booster for the age group. The FDA approved the booster shot earlier this week. Wall Street is closing with stocks lower as inflation concerns remain. Investors continue to worry about the Federal Reserve rate hikes to fight rising inflation that may cause a recession. Target saw its shares fall by 24% yesterday and again showed losses after its cited restrained consumer demand due to inflation. At the closing bell, the Dow lost 236 points to 31,253. The evidence collection phase in the Buffalo grocery store massacre is over. That's the word today from Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, who led a briefing in front of the Tops Market. U.S. Attorney Trini Ross said the Justice Department is on top of this case.
We have all the support of the Department of Justice that we need to make sure that we do the investigation we need to, the way it should be done in this community.
Peyton Gendron allegedly killed 10 people at the Tops grocery store last week in what's being called a racially motivated attack against black people. Senate Democrats are introducing a bill to protect against future baby formula shortages. The Protect Infants from Formula Shortages Act would require manufacturers to notify the FDA of future supply issues to give them time to deal with the issue. It would also have formula manufacturers develop plans to manage risk for their supplies. President Biden is cheering the bids by Finland and Sweden to join NATO.
Today I'm proud to welcome and offer the strong support of the United States for the applications of two great democracies.
Biden met with the leaders of the two European allies at the White House and called it a momentous day. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Comic-Con Revolution is returning to the Inland Empire May 21st and 22nd for its 5th anniversary convention. We are once again bringing an all-star lineup of comic talent, professional wrestlers, celebrities, toys, collectibles, and family-friendly fun to the Ontario Convention Center. As always, kids 12 and under are free with a paid adult, so mark your calendar for the 5th anniversary of Comic-Con Revolution this May 21st and 22nd at the Ontario Convention Center. For more information, go to www.comicconrevolution.com.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. As a reminder, you can follow us on both Instagram or Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John, and you can stay in touch on those platforms. You can send me messages, and I appreciate the messages I do get. I get them from all around the world. It just blows me away. And if you miss an episode, just go to YouTube and put in Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you'll get the last almost 4.5 years worth of shows. I can't believe the show is that old. I was expecting to be here just a short time, but you folks keep telling them to put me on, so it's your fault. So I thank you for that. And also, I am on Twitter. Why? I don't know, but I am. But it's at Father John Reed. Father is spelled out, and Reed is the proper Irish R-E-I-D. Anything less would be uncivilized. And so you can find me there as well and send me messages. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, as always, I'd like to tell you about the best pharmacy just west of the Mississippi, which is Claremont Pharmacy, which fortunately they decided to open up in Claremont, California. I thought that was good thinking, yeah. And it's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. Dr. Nikki Ho is the proprietor of that establishment, and they take care of all my pharmaceutical needs. I almost got some gas leaks there, didn't I? And so, my goodness, sorry, NBC. Send Mark the bill. Anyhow, they take care of all my diabetic stuff, a little bit more of the gastro stuff will be later. Right. Yeah. But anyhow, tell Dr. Nikki I said hi. You'll be glad you went there. And if you want the best DJ services in all the world now. I mean, Frank just works the show, but he also has LakesideDJServices.com. And, he does a great job. And I know that he has some weddings coming up and some other school events. And he also has a photo booth, which is a lot of fun. You go there and you put on these different costumes, or, for extra $20, you don't have to wear costumes at all. But he doesn't want me to tell you about that. But he's looking at me through the glass like, oh, boy. Oh, man, he's going to mess with tonight's show quite a bit for that one. But, again, you can book him for stuff at LakesideDJServices.com. He really does a fantastic job. He's not like some people that go in there and they decide what they're going to do. He comes in and finds out what you would like, and you actually get the show that you wanted for your guests. And so it's a neat thing to do. And from listening to the show that Frank is absolutely trustworthy. And finally, just a reminder of my friend Glenn Kirshner with Justice Matters on YouTube. If you want straight information on the legal things going on, this is the guy to follow. I personally support what he does financially, so I want to throw that out there. And you can too if you decide to, but the YouTube stuff is free. Glenn was a federal prosecutor for 25 years, and then he was also a JAG lawyer in the Army, prosecutor for 6.5 years. So he served his country quite well, but most importantly, he's a man of integrity. If he says it, you can count on it. You know me, as my listeners, I fact check everything, and Glenn is, I think, I'm at still 99.9% of the time. I haven't been able to catch him in a place where it wasn't accurate. Wow. In one place, he did start to misspeak, and I'll be doggone if he didn't come back and say, you know what, I said this, but I misspoke. This is what it is. So he's a man of integrity, so I enjoy that. Tonight, I have a very special guest. I'm very excited to have him. In fact, I was on his podcast a couple weeks ago, and his name is Dean Wright, and he works with Step Up on Second. But he also has the podcast, the
Terminally Unique Podcast.
Terminally Unique Podcast. And, and I have terminal dementia, so and it's killing me tonight. But this program where Dean serves works with homeless and also substance abuse, which sometimes go hand in hand, sometimes don't. But I wanted him to share tonight what this program does, what his work entails, because I think we see things in the news regarding the homeless, and we kind of pass it off like, okay, that's someone else's problem, when it's really all of our problem. It's a humanitarian problem. These aren't bad people trying to get good. They're people who are wounded trying to find some solutions. And so Dean is in the
business of helping find these solutions. So, Dean, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Father John. I appreciate coming on here, and appreciate you coming on my show too. I had such a great time with you. I was like looking to spend time with you any way I could. So,
well, I appreciate it. I was going to say something outrageous, but I'm already in Dutch with NBC once tonight.
Yeah, you're already in trouble.
Yeah. Well, you know, just because I'm an old one doesn't mean I have to advertise what it is, right?
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
right. That's right.
So let's talk about Step Up on Second. What is that?
So it's a nonprofit organization that helps house homeless people, and we provide mental health services for them, and yeah, it's just all around. It started off with one office in Santa Monica on 2nd Street, hence the name Step Up on Second. And they started providing services there, and it's just grown from there over the years, and to where now we're nationwide. I mean, we're not in every state, but we have offices in Atlanta and in Florida, and all throughout California, up in Sacramento, all the way down to in San Bernardino County, LA. So we're everywhere, and there's two halves to the organization. There's the housing half, and then there's the mental health half, and the housing half is the part that I work for, but I'm also a therapist there, and so I do provide some therapy services, even though I'm on the housing half.
There you go.
Yeah. It's been an amazing journey for me, because I have grown up in LA my whole life, and I remember as a child there was it was a few scattered people here and there that were that were obviously homeless, and over the years it just like multiplied.
Yes.
Every decade it would like double or triple the amount, and then about 5-6 years ago I was working in drug treatment, and I was hanging out in Hollywood a lot, and I was kind of like overtaken by how many people are suffering this this terrible lifestyle, or I don't even know what to call it. It's just a terrible fate.
Sure.
And I had the opportunity. Somebody that I knew started working with them, and he told me about it, and he gave me the opportunity to work for them, to apply with them, and I started working about 3.5 years ago, and I tell you, it changed my whole perception on what homelessness is, and it's like, and it's interesting when you talk to people around, and they talk about homelessness, and they kind of talk about the people who suffer homelessness in a way that it makes it their fault, or makes it, or it's like looked down upon. And I know how easy it is. I know how easy it is to look like that, because all of a sudden you look down your street and there's people living on the sidewalk, and all the things that happen when people have to live that way. But when you get to know people, as individuals, and you get to hear their stories, and it like hurts my heart, when I hear people talking about it like that, and I just feel like I need to educate people, as much as I can.
Well, yes, and we've tried to turn into a law enforcement issue when it's much deeper than that, because nobody wants anyone sleeping in front of their door, or peeing on the back of their building.
Exactly.
And instead of working on a solution, we've made it somewhat political, and I'm just sharing my own point of view here, because I've done work with some of the homeless in the past, and I can remember how brokenhearted I would become, because people didn't know the story behind what was taking place. We learned, you probably learned this in your training, you don't ask people where they came from, but you ask them what happened to them.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. Now, a side question that has nothing to do with your program. I'm just curious, because you are in the Santa Monica office. Is Claire Foundation still down there?
Oh yeah, they do such great work.
Yeah.
I
had a family member who go through that a couple times.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do such great work with people, and I mean, we could do a whole show on drug treatment, but I feel like the longer people can be in treatment, the higher the success rate is. You know that probably just from working around
Yes, yes. I worked in addiction for years and years and years before it was popular.
Exactly. Before the celebrities came in, right?
Yeah. Mainly as a counselor, not as much as a client. But, creative research is creative research.
Yeah.
So, outstanding. And so we were talking before the show that some of the things that people don't understand, and we'll just get a chance to just get to the start of this, and then we'll have to do the rest after commercial break. But how difficult it is getting the vouchers, and people think that people just sign up for something. They don't realize why you need an advocate to help you with all these things.
Yeah, I mean, first off, the waiting list to get to where you get to like fill out paperwork for a voucher maybe years on some level. I know that it goes into a system that seems very like obtuse. Like you don't know how people are ranked in the system, but usually it goes by like health concerns or by age or by risk level. They determine, and then so they wait this amount of time, whether they're in a shelter or on the streets, and then they and these government systems that take in this information, they don't have the ability to actually process this. So all they can do is just put make this risk assessment, and then they shoot it out to nonprofits, which like nonprofits like Project 180 or Step Up on Second or PATH, which is People Assisting the Homeless.
Right.
Yeah. So those types of organizations get these vouchers sent out to them.
NGOs, right?
Or they get the people sent out to them, and then they're assigned to case managers like myself, and then we kind of run them to go get a voucher. Now that sounds like a pretty easy prospect, but it's so hard. It's so hard because Okay, so first off, let's go communication. Communication-wise, keeping communication with somebody who doesn't have a home is a much harder prospect than you might think. And there are free phones that are giving. They call them Obama phones or whatever, but they're terrible. They have terrible service on them. They break constantly. And then when you're living in a community where it's all open, their phones are constantly being stolen from one another. And so, they might have a phone for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, for 2 months. You never know, and then it disappears. So communication's the first barrier. And then you have like sometimes mental health is a huge barrier because whether you're dealing with ADHD or you're dealing with schizophrenia or any a number of mental illnesses, you're definitely dealing with a tougher time for those people to focus and to be able to do a bunch of steps, like for instance get an ID, California ID. It's not right. It's not an easy prospect to figure out, to get somebody to find them, to get them to go to the DMV and to actually get through the whole process in one day. And then when it comes to them, if they have some sort of mailing address, to actually get, see, sometimes they'll get it, and then before I see them, they lose it again, or it's stolen from them.
Right. Well, real quick, speaking about losing our address, Frank's looking at me through the glass that if I don't go to commercial break, my show's going to lose its address. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. My guest this evening is Dean Wright, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
You may think every weather app is the same until you see WeatherBug over-deliver on so many layers. With more free map layers than any other weather app, WeatherBug warns you the moment lightning strikes near you, prepares you for your commute with road conditions, routes, and even cameras. With everything from pollen and air quality to severe storm risks, radar, and satellite coverage, WeatherBug prepares you for the unpredictable. Download the WeatherBug app, trusted by over 10 million users, today for free.
And welcome back. You are tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And shout out to some of the people who have been sending me a lot of messages this last week. I appreciate that you've been checking in on me because you know I've been having some ups and downs with the illness. And thank you for continuing to check on me. I appreciate it. And glad to have Frank here, who's doing some incredible stuff with his business there, so it's good. Again, my guest this evening is Dean Wright. He works with Step Up on 2nd, dealing with homeless people and substance abuse and such. And when we went to the break, we're talking about some of the process and how difficult it can be working with people who are homeless, particularly with mental health issues. During the break, we're talking about how the fact that just because someone came in a good mindset today doesn't mean they'll be in that mindset tomorrow, particularly if they're schizophrenic or bipolar.
Yeah. I mean, any number of mental illnesses. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with one person one day, and then maybe a day or a week later, it's like completely different, personality or focus level, and oftentimes it's the instability of living on the street and not having that access to the easy things that we think of, like, a faucet and a cup that you can take your medications with at a certain time, with a clock on a wall that you can take your medications with every time at the same time every day. And then people, like, again, stealing medication from one another, or
yeah.
Oftentimes there'll be, like, a lot of times people are undiagnosed with these different mental illnesses, and they're trying to self-medicate, and so they'll use stimulants, or they'll use marijuana, or they'll use downers to kind of try to regulate themselves, and it's just right. Like.
Self-medicate, right?
Yeah, self-medication, and and then not to mention all the trauma that goes out there. The stuff that people see is, like, it's mind-blowing once I get them housed, if I can get them housed, that's when the stories start coming out. And that's me as a therapist dealing with these clients' trauma, and as a case manager, I see things come up, and these issues that come up that are a challenge to keep them housed. And so I'll sit down and I'll talk with them, and I'll be like, okay, so when your neighbor knocks on your door and asks you to turn down the music or something, or asks you something, why do you see that as a threat? Why do you like punch them in the face, or you yell at them, or tell them to F off, or something like that? And so, we go over where the feelings are coming from, but that to unwind all those experiences, all that trauma, it takes years, and I really do feel like I do see it, and over the last few years that I've been working there, I've seen improvements, but it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back type of situation, and people have to go through it at a certain speed, but there are success stories.
Yeah, and some things that can be issues that you have to face is, do they have a doctor? Because
right.
when you're homeless, they don't always have a steady doctor, particularly in the field of psychiatry.
Yeah.
Are they able to get their prescriptions filled?
Right. Right.
And some of them, because of how they look or how they may smell, there's some pharmacists that won't let them in the pharmacy.
Yeah.
So they're having trouble getting their medications then. But also, as we were talking about during the break, with certain diagnoses, and I'm using these two interchangeably a little bit, even though they're not, but because it happens most often with these two, which is bipolar disorder, manic depressive, for those who don't know what that means, and schizophrenia. a lot of times when they start feeling better, they stop taking the medication because they don't think they need it anymore, or they don't like the side effects.
Right. Both of those two things, it seems like, they start getting better, and they're like, oh, okay. I think that I just needed a little bit to stabilize myself, but I'm okay. And you know what? When I'm taking it, it makes me feel tired. It makes me lethargic, and it makes me gain weight. There's all kinds of side effects that most of them don't like. I don't feel myself. And so then they stop, and then they kind of go through this cycle, in and out, in and out. It's rough.
How come you looked at me that way when you said makes me gain weight? you call me Gordo?
That's why I'm wearing a jacket, so no one can see.
You heard that, folks. He called me Father Gordo. But another thing that happens that I used to see from time to time, and I'm interested in your experience in this, is sometimes when they were desperate, they would sell their medications to other people, particularly Ritalin, because we used to call it pharmaceutical speed.
Right. That's what it is.
And so they don't have what they need. And, I had forgotten a lot about that till I was out in L.A., a few months ago. And I see on this telephone pole, these people are offering to buy diabetic test strips.
Oh, yeah.
And because a lot of people can't get them. They're expensive.
They are very expensive.
And, you and I, we're fortunate. We're people with health insurance. I'm assuming you have health insurance.
Yeah.
I go into Claremont Pharmacy. Nikki takes care of me, and my insurance picks up the tab.
Right.
My only responsibility is to take the medications.
Right.
And I have it made because I have a place to go to. I have my little things put out because at this stage of my illnesses, I take a lot of medications. I'm 26 or 27 now.
Wow.
And so, I have them all when I'm supposed to take them and such, particularly with the dementia, so I don't forget.
Right.
They don't have that advantage.
No. You know what? I got to say, I'm going to give it up to Step Up on second, because we have a psychiatrist that goes in there, sees clients out of our facility. I work at the Hollywood office, actually, in Lexington, and we have an amazing psychiatrist that comes there to see the clients. We have some nurses that work there. They get them their medications. So we do have that option for them to eliminate the possibility of them not being able to go to the pharmacy or not being able to see, so they're trying to get that middle ground in there, to get some of that gray area out of it. So
wow.
yeah, it's an amazing organization. I got to say, I lucked out when I got a job there. But the thing with it is even as good as they are, it can't cover everyone. I've seen, sometimes mental illness is so bad that there's like this they fall, some clients can fall through the cracks, because I've had clients assigned to me that would just disappear for weeks on end, and I would go and look for them, and I would call, and you can't find them, and at some point you gotta go, I need to give this voucher to someone who can use it,
Mm-hmm.
And so just going through that process, it's so heartbreaking, like what you're saying before.
Particularly as long as it could take to get the voucher. I know even with Section 8, it could take years. My uncle qualified for it. He retired from the post office, and it took him 3 or 4 years to get a Section 8 voucher for a senior apartment.
Yeah.
And he didn't have all the other stuff.
Right.
So he was in a place where he was okay, but a lot of these people aren't.
Yeah.
And I don't think Tent City is the solution.
No.
What do you think about these small houses they're erecting?
You know what? I guess I would rather see somebody living in one of these small houses for a short time than on the streets, and having, at least it's a little bit more hygienic.
Yeah,
wow,
hygienic.
I don't know the words.
Hygienic.
Yeah, a little more hygienic than having these tents, and the fire hazards that go along with these tents. I've seen a couple of major fires in these little tent cities, and it's so scary. Yeah.
And I think we have to also have the political will, and I hate bringing politics in it, but it is part of it. I can remember years ago, in the San Bernardino area, I was, this is about 20 years ago. Oh my God, where does time go?
Yeah, I know, right?
And I was doing some stuff with some homeless people, And Norton Air Force Base had been closed for decades.
Right.
But they still had all the housing there. And I tried to work with the government saying, look, this is housing that's empty. Can we? And they said, oh, it's not up to code. I said, do you think underneath the bridge is up to code?
Right, right.
But because the political will wasn't there,
Right.
these people stayed on the street with all this empty housing,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not up to code. So let's bring it up to code.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's the good thing about the homeless problem right now is that I think that the left and the right can see that they can see the benefits in it, because if when we don't do anything about the homeless problem, we have to deal with there was an article written by Malcolm Gladwell back in 2006 called $1 Million Murray. I don't know if I don't know if you read that. Yeah. And so this guy was from Reno, and through using services, because emergency services and criminal justice services, he racked up a tab of $1 million. This is 2006 dollars, which is a heck of a lot more than it is now. And he ended up dying very young, much younger than he should have, where we could have probably maybe spent $20,000 or $30,000 a year on this guy at the most, and him having a longer life and probably becoming like a productive member of society, which is what I'm starting to see with the programs I'm working with now. I'm seeing people turned from this a person that can't make it, that is not self-sufficient, to self-sufficiency, one little step at a time. And that's what I'd love to see for everybody. I have the opportunity for it, at least.
And I just wanted to spell a thing that's been said for so many years that honestly has always angered me a bit. Look, the majority of people who are homeless are not homeless because they want to be. They didn't make a choice. This is what I want to do.
Right.
Things happened along the way.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that happens is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, yeah.
And so many of our veterans wound up on the street, not because they chose to be, but because we broke them and didn't fix them.
Yeah.
I spent a little time in the Army, so
yeah.
It means a great deal to me when I see some of this. And there was a Colonel Smith, that was really his name, Colonel Joseph Smith, who had put together a program in L.A. County for these veterans specifically, and I no longer have contact with him, but at one time, through some of the work I did with, like I said, I work with people on both sides of the aisle, but with Mike Antonovich's office, was able to get hooked up with him and was able to send veterans to him at one point. Mm-hmm. But I don't even know what the status of that is anymore, because my assignments changed and everything. But
Right. Well, there's somewhere, it's just shy of 40,000 homeless vets in the United States right now, and there is enough. The VA has enough resources to house all 40,000 of them. So really, you can see the problem here, right? I mean, this is what I was talking about before with dealing with mental illness, with dealing with that communication, with dealing with all this stuff. It's hard to, even though we have the resources to house these vets, how come they're still on the streets, But, engaging them and getting them spooled up and in there is like the challenge right now,
What do you see as the biggest part of that challenge? And I'm asking that sincerely because I really don't know the answer to that. Is it getting the people there? Is it the system? Is it a combination of thereof?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like you said, like with PTSD, with a lot of these mental illnesses. It just makes it really hard for people to engage. For us to engage with them in a meaningful way. I can't just go on the street, find a vet, and go, you know what, I'm putting you in this temporary home that you'll feel safe in. I can put them in a shelter, but in a shelter they don't feel safe. You know, they get re-traumatized in these places, or they can. Not all shelters are bad, but a lot of them put a lot of people in a close proximity to one another. So, so I think there needs to be a little bit better resources for people to. That initial engagement, taken them out of that horrible environment that they're in and put them in somewhere else. Housing First, that initiative really really changed everything back in in the last 20 years. It's really started to take effect. And so before, it used to be where when people were homeless, they had to like qualify by like, oh, getting their mental health under control, getting their health, getting all kinds of stuff under control. But who can do that while living on the streets? That's you're just trying to survive out there.
It reminds me of it's just going to seem corny, but I mean it with all sincerity. A scene from the series MASH. And just to give a little bit, it's Christmas time, and what's his name? The I can think of his real name, not the Charles Winchester.
Oh yeah.
He had given some really rare chocolates to this orphanage, and but the idea was they were not to know where it came from, just the guy who ran the orphanage did. And so they're having the Christmas party, the orphans were there, and he saw these guys walking around with the chocolates. So where'd you get that? He says, well, I bought it at the market here. And so Winchester pulls the guy out. He says, I told you that these are for the kids, and you sold them?
Right.
He says, well, I'm sorry, I can give the money back if you want, but I was able to use that money to buy rice and put a new roof on the place. And Winchester stopped him and says, where are my manners? I forgot, how can a child have dessert before he's had supper?
Oh, wow.
And it hit me really deep, because we're dealing with that in this. How can people take care of their mental health issues if they don't first have a roof over their head, or the basics, or even nutrition? Because a lot of mental health issues, as you know as a trained therapist, can be triggered by nutritional issues. When you're really hungry, and if you're diabetic, like I am, it can sometimes your blood sugar drops, and you can look like you're drunk when you're not drunk.
I know. And like bipolar disorder, for instance, they've done a lot of studies, like with a ketogenic diet, and actually that really benefits a bipolar disorder, if anybody has that, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. But it makes sense, because if you take in carbohydrates, it kind of triggers like an energy response in you, which of course could trigger a manic response in you too. So like nutrition, the things you eat, the kinds of food you eat, the quality of foods you eat, all of that stuff, it makes a big deal. And then also talk therapy is, I think a lot of people think it's like, hippie or mumbo jumbo, but I know that the people that I've dealt with, I've seen so much growth, and so people come from really dark places to much better places,
Well, if you don't get down to causes and conditions, you never get to what's at the baseline causing this. And, we used to say that until we learn our lesson from the experience, we have to re-experience the lesson. But when history repeats itself, the price goes up.
Right.
And so this is a lesson I'm glad we're finally learning, because the price keeps going up. Look at it. You said it so well earlier that each decade we have more and more homeless. And we've learned so much with mental health. You would think that, well, it's one thing to learn, it's another to be able to implement.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're implementing in the most important basic way. That I think one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was because I think there's a number of people who don't know that these programs exist.
Right. That's kind of what we were talking about before, with like having the resources to home all the to house all the vets, and not having that done. You're like, why? There should just be a line somewhere. Come on over here and we'll put you in housing. But it's a little more complicated.
Well,
Frank's
looking at me through the glass like, speaking of lines, I'm not going to get my bowl of soup if we don't go to commercial. And so you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on NBC Radio, KCAA, and my guest this evening is Dean Wright, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
You may think every weather app is the same until you see WeatherBug over-deliver on so many layers. With more free map layers than any other weather app, WeatherBug warns you the moment lightning strikes near you, prepares you for your commute with road conditions, routes, and even cameras. With everything from pollen and air quality to severe storm risks, radar, and satellite coverage, WeatherBug prepares you for the unpredictable. Download the WeatherBug app, trusted by over 10 million users, today for free.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world on KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And again, you can always catch our episodes on YouTube. And if you get a chance and you watch it, please subscribe, because that's good for our program and helps build the numbers a little bit. And NBC really likes it when that happens. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But most of all, be sure to tell your friends about the program, because I enjoy when someone gets a hold of me and says, I'm glad you talked about this subject because I have a relative or I'm going through this. And so I appreciate the fact that you do this. And I've had a family in the Philippines who've been getting a hold of me, and I'm so grateful that you take the time to go to YouTube when you're halfway across the world to tune in, and then you send me messages about what you get out of it. And so I just want you to know, folks, I do read these things. They mean a great deal to me, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm very fortunate to have some of the most loving listeners of any show. I mean, I'm a really fortunate guy. And so anyhow, my guest this evening is Dean Wright, and he's been talking to us about dealing with homelessness and mental health issues, and he works with the program Step Up on Second, and he's in the Hollywood office. He's a glamour child.
Glamour guy, yeah.
But you have offices everywhere. You maybe
right.
in this area.
Yeah, there's some in San Bernardino. They have offices in Santa Monica and San Jose and Sacramento, and they're just growing by leaps and bounds, because obviously the homeless problem has been growing by leaps and bounds. So what would somebody Google if they want to find out about your program? They would just go to stepuponSecond.org, and there's a lot of information there on the website that talks a lot about our programs. But there's a lot of good programs here in LA that are in LA, the greater LA area that deal with homeless. PATH is also an amazing organization too. They do really a lot of great work. And Project 180, they mainly work with people, formerly incarcerated people,
right?
Which is it's so needed. But
for those of you looking on YouTube, Frank is putting it on the monitor at this time, so you can see he's giving you a demo about how you can check the different places on the drop-down menus. And so this is a place you want to go. It's called stepup.org. And thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. He always does such a great job.
Yeah, the one misconception is that because I tell people about what I do, and I probably field like 8-9 calls a day about, hey, I'm homeless and I need help, and it's heartbreaking because the only thing I can do is tell them to go to get services. If they have mental health services, go to some of these service providers, and through them is how they can sign up for housing. And then they have to go through the system. I wish I could just take them on and just go sign you up, and I'm going to find you some housing. But there's all these steps in the process,
But you can give them direction. Here's where you need to go to start.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah, yeah. I just, like I said before, like I wish there was just a line. I could just have a line form in front of me and then just sign them up and bring them right into housing. But there's a bunch of steps along the way, you know. But that's okay, you know. I mean, I feel like the clients that I've housed, when they get housing, they're so appreciative, and you know, it's like the struggle to get to that point has been so hard for them that they really appreciate it. And a lot of people talk about how, it doesn't work, they fall out of housing. To be fair, in 3.5 years I've been working there, I've only had one client fall out of housing after I got him housing, and the only reason he did was because he had an accident that put him in a convalescent home where he couldn't pay his rent at that time, because because they do have to pay a portion of the rent, you know. So I mean, a very small portion, but a portion nonetheless. So
a lot of people may not know that, and they think that these people are just getting freebies for the people who get really upset about that. So what if it would have been a freebie?
Right.
These are our brothers and sisters.
And also, like, on the other side of it, it actually makes financial sense for people that are on the streets between the criminal justice system and medical. It ends up costing the taxpayer thousands and thousands of dollars every year. So wouldn't you rather spend less money to give them more hope and possibly get them? We actually have, speaking of which, we had a couple of people that came up through Step Up on Second, and as they made more money, they paid more and more their rent, to where now they work for Step Up on Second, and they're not on that, and they're not on these programs anymore, because they went through the proper channels, and it worked for them, you know. So I love stories like that. I love to hear more of them.
They received the gift of dignity.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the greatest thing. You know, one of the problems I've had with some of the programs in the past that have been religious based is that you have to subscribe to a certain religious belief to receive.
Yeah.
I remember there was one in Ontario, and I don't know if I get NBC sued if I mentioned it, but their office was downstairs from my office when I was in full-time practice, when I first went into full-time practice counseling. And in order to get their services, it was a long-term thing. You had to absolutely become not just a Christian, but their form of Christian, which is white evangelical. And they just made it so you had to keep making more and more promises you were there.
Right.
So you really paid for your stay there with your dignity, which I say the price is too high.
Yeah.
You know, they're not there because they're bad folks.
Right.
They're not there because they're some kind of sinner. They're there because they need help.
Right.
And when you're dangling that, and you know, they asked me to come brainstorm with them one time, and I spent an hour with them, and I helped them put this whole thing together. And when they said, that's brilliant. And when they asked me where I got the information, I told them because it wasn't Christian-based, they tore the whole thing in half. They weren't interested. And I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad for programs like yours where you give them dignity, not rob them of dignity.
Right.
And I know I'm going on a little long about that, but it's a big deal to me.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I love about Mary's Mercy Center here in San Bernardino, they feed over 8,500 hot meals per month.
Wow.
And they also have a 2-year program for women and their children, unwed women and children, called Veronica's House. But with the feeding and everything, the receiving of clothing, you don't have to give away your dignity. If you want to attend Mass, you're welcome to. You're not required to.
Right.
And all they do is they just want to give love, some dignity, and they have a place where you can shower, get new clothing. And I mention that because while you're handling this other end of it, people need to know that there's a thing called hope. And hope without action is just a promissory note. It means nothing.
Yeah.
It has to have action. So it sounds like you're putting action with the hope.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like this non-judgmental approach, some people would think of it as maybe like enabling, but like I don't see it that way, because I know that, like, you know, just ignoring this problem has gotten us to where we're at right now. You know,
Right.
We need to do something different. We need to try something different. We need to give people a chance. We need to give them some sort of stability in their life and see if they can pick it up from there and move forward. And, you know, from my I haven't been there forever, but I've been there 3.5 years, and I see improvements all the time, and not in 100%, but you know what? Nothing in life is 100%. I don't know, I don't know anything that's 100%.
Increments.
Except for me wanting to eat all the time. That's 100%. I want to eat all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you there. I hear the old expression, the trip around the world starts with the first step.
That's right. That's right.
And it's like that old story that's been around forever and ever about this little girl who's walking along the beach and taking these sand dollars and throwing them back in, and this old man sees what she's doing. Says, "What are you doing?" She says, "Well, I'm throwing these sand dollars that washed up on the beach back into the ocean." He says, "Well, you can't possibly save any of them." "Maybe not, but I just saved that one."
That's great. That's great.
So you help the person who's in front of you.
Yeah. I feel like I read something like that in your book, I think, about unconditional love and how God loves everybody, not just the Christians, not just whomever, not just the chosen group. God loves everyone, and like not to. I just think that like that's the kind of love that if we could all put that kind of love out, we would have such a better world today. If we could just love without putting conditions on people, and I mean it sounds idealistic, and I am an idealist, but I think that I think that people need that unconditional love sometimes in order to like really grow.
Yes, you get no argument from me on that.
Yeah, I was waiting for an argument. What happened?
Well, yeah, I was taking a dementia nap. Just because you see me sitting here doesn't mean I'm actually here.
Okay,
I could be someplace else at any time.
Right.
I have to check in once in a while.
Yeah.
But people don't choose to have mental health issues.
Right.
I see people get angry with them, and usually we're angry and fearful about what we don't understand.
Yeah.
But I can remember seeing some of the stuff growing up, and I think, well, why don't they just? And then one day it struck me, they're not like this because they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't ask to have these mental health issues. They would love for it to be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And aren't we supposed to help each other?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, when I was growing up, I grew up in middle-class America, and my grandparents helped raise me, and they had a business, and, there was all the gang problems in the 1980s when I was growing up, and I was like, why are they shooting each other? Like, I just had no idea why all this stuff was happening. Why are they so violent? Why is all this stuff happening? And then I went to college, and I one of my buddies, Jerry, African American gentleman from South Central, told me his story, and I understood immediately where he came from. He came from a family where his mom and dad died. He was in foster care in South Central. He never traveled outside of South Central LA until he went to foster care. When he went to foster care, they sent him to Altadena, which is above Pasadena.
Yes.
And he was like, wow, this place is so different. And then that family kind of introduced him to a bigger world. But when he was living in South Central, that's all he knew. And I've used that same model in my head whenever I see something I don't quite understand, the way people live or whatever. Then I was like, you know what, I want to dig in. I want to find out why.
Yes.
That why helps me. That understanding helps me help them if I have the opportunity.
It's funny you mentioned that. Gabby grew up in South Central.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she grew up there. She came here when she was 5 years old. She's originally from Mexico.
Oh.
And she was raised in South Central since she was 5 years old. Her mother still lives in South Central.
Really?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's amazing. It really does make a difference what you're being raised with and the kind of fears you're having to combat.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets it, even.
Yeah. I even think about just the price of rent in LA.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking for a new place right now, and I'm like, I work for a homeless organization, or a place that's supposed to house homeless people, and I can't afford afford rent in LA. I mean, it's like $1,900 for a 1-bedroom apartment nowadays. I mean, yeah, like so you know, you don't even have to have a mental health problem in LA to be homeless. You know, you could just some of my clients have domestic violence where they were, you know, counting on a spouse that was violent, and then they were taken, you know, they're separated at some point, and you know, then what do you do then for money, you know? Or
and then you blame the victim.
Yeah, exactly. End up in a shelter, and yeah, it's rough out there, but there's many reasons for homelessness, but
and shelters aren't fun. Let's be real clear about that. People don't go there because they're looking for a vacation at the Ritz-Carlton.
Right.
Shelters, as well-meaning as they are, and I support them, don't get me wrong, they can also be very dangerous places.
Yeah.
Where a lot of rapes take place, a lot of...
lots of theft, and, you know, what do they call it when they bully somebody and they take their money? Gosh, why can't I think of
strong arm robbery?
Something like that. Let's just call it that. Yeah. but yeah, no, I mean, I feel like, you know, they do as best a job as they can. But I remember picking up one of my clients from a shelter to go show her an apartment, and she didn't have shoes. And I go, what happened to your shoes? Oh, they stole them.
Yeah.
So you know, luckily I have a really great network on Facebook, and I put the word out, and I got about 50 pairs of shoes donated. So I you know, I didn't donate them all to her, but I gave her a few pair, and then kind of spread them around. But yeah, I mean, that's the one good thing about social networking is, like, you know, there's a lot of good people out there, and you know, if they see a need, they can you can reach out and reach a lot of people quickly, you know.
I think the word you might be looking for is you got perpetrated on.
Yeah, perpetrated. That's right.
There's my old law enforcement background. How about that?
Yeah.
You can tell someone once worked in law enforcement.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And, wow. You know, we're down to our last 3 minutes.
Yeah, I was just looking.
Yeah, time goes by quick.
It flew. Yeah.
And what are some thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with on this topic? What do you think is important for them to know or consider looking into?
You know, if I could impart anything to anybody, it would be to get to know somebody that's homeless, to actually sit down and talk with them, buy them a cup of coffee if you can, or a lunch or something, and talk, get to know somebody, because when you start knowing the personalities behind it, it becomes a whole different game for you, or it was for me. You know, like I saw, and each story is different, and each story that brought them to where they're at, it's heartbreaking, and it's also like a testament to the human spirit that they can be surviving. I have a 65-year-old woman on my caseload who's been homeless for 20 years. In her mid-40s, she went homeless, and because of some trauma, and she's been homeless for 20 years. And like, how do you survive? How do you survive on the streets for 20 years? I don't know how you do it. And you know, so I mean, that's what, if I can impart one thing, I'd say get to know them, personalize it, and you'll definitely come away with a different perspective.
Speaking of that, I want to dedicate tonight's show to an old friend, God rest his soul, David Lay. And David was on the streets for about 20 years, did his own dentistry work with a set of pliers, would have to pull his own teeth out. Yeah, wow. He did all that. And he got sober. And he wound up going to school. He wound up becoming a KDAC, a drug and alcohol counselor.
Right.
We used to call him KDAC. I'm sorry, I'm an old guy. And wound up working for Charter Oaks, which is now Aurora Hospital.
I used to work for them myself.
And when he died, I got to give him last rites and stuff. He was so grateful. And one of the things he said that really got me was he was living somewhere and someone stole his clothing. Instead of being angry, he was so excited. He said, I've never had anything worth stealing before. This is so cool. So tonight's episode is for David Lay, and know that you're still thought of. We still have a lot of love for you and all the people you helped. Yeah. We're at the end of tonight's show, and I want to thank our guest this evening, Dean Wright. And
thank you, Father John.
If no one told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And thank you for tuning in again on Viewpoint with Father John. And thanks for taking the trip out here. I know it's a long drive for you.
It's worth every minute.
And I recommend his podcast, the Terminally Unique podcast.
Thank you.
I look forward to being with you again. Be safe, and don't forget, this is a great day to love. Bye for now.